Hello and welcome. Today I'm gonna create the crowd state for the Ghost Goblins game um, using the new state machine that I imported to the project. So let's start by going to the player folder, state machine, states, scripts. Here I'm gonna create the player crowd state, and here it's gonna be sealed. It's gonna be part of the entities player. All right, and here it's gonna inherit from the player actually state base. All right, I don't think this is the correct namespace. It should be actually be inside the state machine. All right, let's just keep it like that. It's easier to reuse the namespace. Okay, so I'm gonna implement the abstract class setup state. I'm gonna also use the on enter state. And here I'm gonna basically do the same thing using a hash for the animation and player. Um, I think I can just player crouch animation state. And here's the player crouch at idle animation like that. Okay. And here on the on enter state, I can just play the animation like this. We don't need to call the base. Just play the crouch animation. And of course, we need the animator. And we can get here using the entity component references. Okay. Uh, I think uh, that's all we need for now. Now we need to create the asset menu. Um, let me just reuse this path using the player crowd state. All right. Now we also need to create the transition, but for now, let me just create the state. Create state machine, player states, player crowd state. All right. And let me try add this state here on the base to see if it's working. Player crowd state. All right. So it is actually working. Um, kind of. Uh, it's not exactly on the ground, as you can see. The collider is actually uh, blocking the player, so he can't actually touch it. So we would have to like do something like this. Uh, but or we could actually just change uh, the the sprite pivot, but I don't know if I'm gonna actually do that. But okay, it's working. That's all we need for now. Let me revert to the idle state. Now I'm gonna create the transition. Um, I'll just put player is I'll put like trying to crouch. It will be a select class. Uh, Let me just reuse the information that I also have here using the transition, the create asset menu. Okay, I can delete this. implement, and I need the um, crouch input like I'm doing here. So I will create the player crouch action. And here I can just use the player inputs dot. Here I can just create the. It will not return a float. It will be just a default input definition. So I can just set as a crouch input and crouch. And this should actually be inside the setup state, setup condition actually. Okay, so here we got the can transit method to check if we can switch to the crouch state. And what this will return is the player crouch action um, is pressed because we need to hold the button. This is a method, no, it's a bool. So we can just return this. All right. Now we can save all of this, go back here and regenerate the input class uh, using the input actions. Add the crouch action and the WS button. Save. It's gonna regenerate for us. So I can just add here the crouch. Is equals new input definition and player put actions crouch. All right. Um, now I can use the transition. Let me replace this because it's not jumping, it's crouching. Uh, here got the script tables. I can create the transition. Player is trying to crouch. Okay. And here are the settings. I can add let me just add here the idle the player crouch state if I'm trying to crouch, and of course I also need to be on the ground to crouch. Okay, so let's hit play, and if I press S, you can see that I crouch, and I got an error here. Oh, because I haven't added the crouch state here yet. So let me just add the crouch state. And I'll go back to the idle state if I would say I need a condition where the strength crouch is false. Like I'll I'll go back to the idle state if this is false. Alright, so to fix this, I think I'll just create another transition. Player is um not crouching, not press crouch button. I'll just say not crouching. And it's basically the same thing like this. I'm just add the transition condition. Um, this, the usings like this, and this actually returns true. But this returns false. All right, I can remove this. I'm not using it. Okay, and I am actually using it. I forgot to add the create asset menu, and this will return if we're not pressing the S button so we can go back to the idle state. I think that's it. We can add the script table now using the transition player is not crouching. I think we should actually press crouch button, but let's just add here the state inside the crouch state. I'll go back to the idle if I'm not crouching. All right. So if I hit play, I should be able to transit to the idle state. All right. So it's working. All right. So what I did here to fix the player offset issue was actually adjust the uh, pivot center to Sprite. So as you can see, I set to a custom one and the middle on the X and 0.7 on the Y. So using that value, I can actually adjust the player sprite to half of the collider. So as you can see, this is the player collider, this one right here. And if I crouch, you can see that I basically take half of the space on the y-axis. So it worked just fine. I keep like that. And as you can see on the game, it doesn't change that any visual, but it fixes um, the offset issue. All right. So now what I need to do is actually um, add more behaviors for the state machine. So here in the states, um, inside the movement, I can actually transit to the crowd state if I'm on ground and also trying to crouch. And I think that's the only states that I can do that, the idle and the movement. Um, and I think that's good. So as you can see, if I move and crouch, um, all right, that's a cool effect, but that's not on the original game. And I wonder why that's happening. I think it's because of the velocity. Uh, all right, let's fix that. Uh, we can actually just set the velocity. We also need the rigid body now. Player rigid body. Let's add here. Uh, get the component. And then once we enter the state, we can just set the velocity to 0. Okay. And that will fix it. So if I hit play, okay. I don't like the idea of getting off the ladder and already crouch. I think it would be better if like we actually press the button to actually crouch. So let me remove actually change the condition here inside the player so that I can actually use the crouching, is trying to crouch as instead of is pressing, use the was pressed this frame. And this way I think we can avoid the transition from the ladder to the crouch state. So I'm crouching Okay, it's working. But if I climb this and alright, it's working. And I don't think that's the there's a problem here. Alright, so I managed to fix the problem, creating a new um physics material. I would just name this as um no friction material. Uh Materials, or just put inside uh entities, uh okay, physics materials. So I removed all the friction, and of course we need to add here. Okay, so it's worked. The player now is transitioning correct to the states, as you can see. But we also need to do one last thing, and that is change the player collider. Uh, Actually, just adjust the height, because once we crouch, you can see that there's also this offset here. Even though we adjusted the sprite to half of the collider, we also need to change this, because if an enemy throws something here, it can actually hit the player because the collider is not adjusted. So what we can do is just adjust the collider here, changing the offset and the size on the y-axis. So we need that parameter inside the state. So let's go to the player crowd state, create a new, let me just like copy this, paste it here. You can use player crouch parameters, parameters, use like this, and this public float will be the collider y offset, and there will be another parameter, collider y size, and can get the parameter here, private player crouch parameters, using the state machine parameters, get parameter object of this type actually. And once we enter the state, we need the collider before that, the player collider. Let's get the entity components, get entity component, box collider 2D. And once we enter the state, we can change the offset and set the new vector using the current x. We don't need to change the x, but we can use the crouch parameters on the y offset and use the size here. Size is equals to new size on the x and the collider y size. And of course, we also need to save these parameters, because we're gonna override the exit state to set to the default value. So what I'm gonna do here is, I think I'm gonna just create two floats, one for the default collider y offset and y size, and I can just get it here. player collider, uh, size Y, actually offset Y, and the size Y. All right. So once we exit, we can just set the default values here using the default offset and the default size. All right. This. Okay. Save. Um, One last thing that I forgot to add here was to override the get parameter object and return new player crouch parameters so that the state machine can get the parameter and add inside the parameters like this. Okay, so let me just mm, play the game and try to find the best value here. Okay, uh, let me just copy the current values because it's, I think I can just set to 0. No, let's just skip like that. Um, the default offset and the size. This will be the crouch size parameters. I'm just set like that. And let me see if I can just set here. Okay, I actually need to change to the crouch. Alright, let me just override the sprite here so it's easier to set like this. Okay, so the values will be I think this is good. So this will be the offset inside the parameter, and this will be the size. All right. And since this is a scriptable object, we don't need to say, and we can just leave. Okay, so now if I hit play and play the game and crouch, we should be able to change the value. Okay, it's working. Okay, I think that's good. We are rotating, but there's no problem with that. Okay, yeah, I that's good. All right, so I think that's good for this state. Um, what we can do now is create the attack state because there's the jump attack, the idle stand attack, and also the crouch. I think we can do that on the next episode because um, maybe that's one of the last player behaviors that we have. Of course, there's the damage and death behavior that we also need to program, but I think that's the last two ones. And but before that, there's the attack. All right, so that's gonna be for the next video, and yeah, that's it for this video. And here's the crowd state, one more behavior for the game. And okay, that's it for this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.